Hey, hey, hey. Time for still another out of this world narrative from our space. You are aware that what is done in the dark will surface. Indeed, not everyone is above such fundamental realities. Today on our space, the reward is rather delicious when you're undervalued by someone believing they are smarter than you. After Caught Wife's affair partner boasted about their secret, I shared images to her and watched as his life fell apart. Apologetic if it seems like I'm running over this. This is all fresh. I'm still trying to understand what my life will be like right now. Using a throwaway since I haven't said this to anyone in my life. I, 34 million, and my 32F wife, Sophia, had 6 years of marriage. Although we have no children, we had always discussed starting soon. It always seemed right around the bend. Still, we just kept waiting for the ideal moment. We first wanted to settle into our new house. We then sought to grow accustomed to our employment. We then waited until we had somewhat more saved up. Looking back, I realized the time never seemed appropriate and never would have been. She was merely guiding me. I was most likely the only one desiring children. She's given me no genuine cause to believe her anymore, hence there's a significant probability I'm merely paranoid now. My wife works in sales, and a lot of her responsibility there is networking and socializing. She's continually showing up for lunches and social gatherings. Although I can't say I completely understand her work, she thinks it's crucial for developing social capital. Though I'm not sure what that is, evidently her department depends on it. Most of these were staff only, but occasionally I would go along with partners invited. Though what I saw didn't seem like actual work. What do I know? After drinking together and acting as though they liked each other for a time, they would stroll off into a corner to mumble about business for the remainder of the evening. Though I found those events intolerable, I went along to be encouraging. I learned some of the folks she collaborated with this way. David was one of those persons. The man struck me as first being a tool. Always sucking up, he was trying to pass like your best buddy, but in a patronizing manner. You know, the kind of person my friend calls when you hardly know each other. He always sent me strange signals. About 2 minutes into our first meeting, I declared I didn't like him. When I informed him I was a roofer, he remarked, "Well, that's certainly a career choice in a way that made it clear it was one he disagreed with." As I said, he is really patronizing. Usually I simply turned aside his remarks for the sake of my wife. Although I object to the idea of creating negative relationships between her and her colleagues, one day he said something I just couldn't let slip. It happened at another one of their corporate events roughly 1 month ago. I had to depart early since I needed enough sleep and had a job the next morning. I was first planning to depart without Sophia until David reassured me, "Don't worry, I'll keep very good care of her for you." Something about his manner of saying it set me off. The answer of my wife infuriated me even more. She said he was an idiot, but it was in light-hearted terms. 2 wouldn't have been too horrible on its own, but when he mentioned that she became all flirty and bashful. The first idea that sprang to me was the whole wife-work-husband scenario. I really have nothing at all down for it. I informed him Sophia was on her way home with me and dropped all the pleasantries from my face and words. She was about to argue, but it wasn't what we agreed upon. I believe she realized I wasn't in an argumentative mindset as she just said farewells and went with me. The vehicle journey home was unpleasant. We avoided talking for some time, and when we did, it turned into a screaming argument right away. She stated I was simply exaggerating over a benign comment. Knowing David was a major tool, I told her I didn't give a damn about his comment. How she had responded to it infuriated me. I shouldn't have had to draw attention to how rude it was for her to flutter lashes at another man just in front of me. It begged me to question her activities when I was not in the room. She turned away me and wouldn't stop nagging about how nasty I was to her colleague. The case came nowhere. After that, things were strained. From then on, I made a point of not accompanying her for any of her professional events. She tried not to bring up David anymore and was a lot more quiet about what happened at work. I had a part that was glad. To be honest, I wanted not to hear about anything involving that man. But another side of me was restless. She didn't seem attempting not to annoy me. It sensed more like she was hiding something. Things sort of returned to normal after a time. Surely on the surface, at least. That incident was eating a hole in my rear of consciousness. I had no hard proof of adultery or anything else. To be honest, I felt she was crushing on David most of all. That did not stop me from losing faith in her nevertheless. Every night I would picture her flirting with him whenever she had to stay late after work. I therefore began monitoring her. She detested it, so I started contacting her more frequently while she was away at her work events. Things appeared to check out most of the time. She would respond to the phone in a frustrated manner, and I could hear her coworkers chattering away in the backdrop. But one day, I overheard something that stoked even more my doubts. She was out for drinks one evening with some firm they were attempting to kiss up to. I phoned her as usual and heard the normal party banter in the back, but this time I caught something else as well. He's phoning once again. His ignorance is shockingly naive. She broke off the phone right away, but I had already heard it. I felt as though I had just caught them sleeping together. I came to see that the reality all along had been the result I had been silently fearing, that my wife was cheating on me with a guy I couldn't stand. I refused to stand for it. The disrespect went beyond than I could have guessed. She'd had the guts to flirt with him in front of me, and she was sleeping with this man. Behind my back, they had been mocking me. Driven right down there to crush his arrogant face first, my inclination was, I knew I would take him as well. He's not exactly a model of physical fitness. I'm a solid-built man. By then, he wouldn't be joking about me working as a roofer. Still, I resolved to cool off and wait at home. Having dealt with David, I was so enraged that I wasn't even sure Sophia would be safe, and I didn't want to act carelessly. I thus waited at home, simmering in resentment. The idea struck me as I was going back over the call in my brain. They considered me to be naive. I would then merely be clueless. I would pretend I hadn't observed anything when she arrived home. I would then search her phone while she was asleep for all the necessary proof. This was clearly headed toward divorce. I would need proof to make sure things turned out as planned. Besides that, I wanted David to pay. I had to get hard evidence and make him regret what he had done. Acting guilty as all hell, Sophia returned home that evening. She returned far sooner than usual, suggesting that she had hurried home to handle damage control. She gently called my name, as if she were worried I would be enraged at her. Naturally, I was, but I pretended not to be. I simply asked her how business was and how the party went. She responded in a hesitant voice, and 5 minutes she looked confident David hadn't heard me. She would shortly enough find out. I spent the rest of the evening acting as the husband who totally trusted my wife. After supper and some TV viewing, every time she looked at her phone I became enraged once more. I recall wondering if she texting him something damning tonight might work out in my favor. Sometimes it pains to be right. I waited until I could hear the gentle breaths indicating she was asleep when she at last went to bed. I gave it 15 minutes to make sure she was sound asleep before I went for her phone and unlocked it. Although I'm not a simple man to scare, my heart was racing as I worked through her words. The course of my whole relationship rested on whatever I was about to discover there. Right from the first communication, I was stunned. She had been texting him that evening, exactly as I had noted. She told him she was relieved that I hadn't heard him. They then made fun of my stupidity in failing to see their little secret. Though there was more as well. Their affair began half a year ago. They had dates, leased hotel rooms, and slept together. Most of this seemed to have been happening on evenings when she had events where my presence wasn't necessary. I took care to SMS everything to myself, not only because of their abundance, but also because the content of all those messages was repulsive, thus navigating through them proved challenging. My own wrath was returning. I stopped posing. I shook her somewhat aggressively to wake her. Though she was terrified, I did not hurt her. She began to talk, but I cut her off and asked her if she had anything to say personally. She woke up real fast when she saw I had her messages open. She was bewildered and sleepy. She started by assuming a defensive posture. I apparently was the bad guy looking through her phone behind her back. She said I couldn't grasp things without the correct background and that I had no right to access her phone without her authorization. The amount she seemed to believe in her own BS really astounded me. I informed her I had heard David's comment since I couldn't stand another second of that. I mentioned that I had long suspected them and quoted how they had made fun of me for being naive. I had more than enough cause to check over her phone. She reacted to that not right away. She implored me to hear her out after a minute of stillness, misty-eyed. She then picked up the victim card and began performing. If she hadn't gone out with him, she said he had threatened to cause her to lose her work, thus things had gotten more intense. She said everything had been done to save her employment. For a while, I doubted her. The messages made it rather evident that flirting had begun everything, most of which first came from her. I told her I wouldn't be standing for treachery. We were over, and first thing in the morning, I would be filing for divorce. The waterworks got underway at that point. She urged me not to call off our marriage over a mistake. She insisted we could still save our marriage, and she loved me. I burst out laughing. Half a year slinking behind my back, violating me and laughing with another man? There was no error in that. One had to make a decision. She now wants to fix things after she was caught. What a hoax. I advised her to keep the theatrics for someone really caring. I showed little curiosity. She begged me to change my mind late into the evening. She finally sobbed herself to sleep when she grew bored with me stonewalling her. Before her waking the next morning, I left the house. Though I had a lot of work ahead of me, I found time to meet with a divorce attorney to start things. Though I'm still disorganized about all of this, starting the divorce has helped me to feel as though I have some control once more. Though I'm eager to be free of Sophia, I also look forward David paying for this. Sophia? Hey, Sophia. It didn't seem like a significant matter. Sure, okay. She seemed agitated, but not because she offended you. Because her house of cards with 2 timing collapsed. OP, you are avoiding a big bullet here. The cosmos is suggesting you can do far better than Sophia here. It's like ordering a steak dinner and instead they deliver frozen chicken nuggets. OP, you are due the steak. Adjust. I'm glad to say that ultimately I got even with both of them. Really, the waiting was the toughest component. Though my attorney helped me to get some sense, I intended to exact revenge on David right now. He advised me to be putting my case in pointless risk. He said he sought little to no alimony and that Sophia remaining working would be the best approach to get that. Should her and David's affair come to light at their company, she stood a good risk losing her employment. Though I pledged to restrain, it was difficult. I won't drag you over the divorce specifics. Stated differently, it was a divorce. Not enjoyable, and surrounded with a lot of emotional turmoil. Sophia not getting alimony from me was the actual miracle. Still, she had a decent career. She did, at least for now. Once the divorce's dust had settled, I started working on the other element of the plan. David was supposed to turn. To be ready for this, I had all the screenshots ready for weeks. David was, you see, a married man with 2 children. I had always knew he was wed. I had visited Emma, his wife. When I learned he had kids, though, I became repulsed. His level of selfishness astounded me. His behavior had destroyed 2 families. He hadn't considered what this romance might affect for his children. Though I felt guilty for the children and their mother, I had to follow my strategy. Finding out who their father was sooner rather than later would be more beneficial for them. Hence, I could not be allowing David to get away with this. Getting Emma's Facebook account came easily enough. The rest was even simpler, though. Almost daily for the past 6 months, I had been living this moment in my imagination. It was just as wonderful as I'd imagined. I began by introducing myself and reminding her that we had crossed paths a couple times. I not bothered waiting for her to respond. I clarified that over half a year our wives had been having an affair together and had lied to us. She should have known about it too, so she could make her own decision, fairly. I told her that over this my marriage had collapsed. She had responded in less than an hour, inquisitively questioning whether this was accurate. She claimed to have known about my divorce, but to have never heard anything regarding her husband's involvement. I expected her to attack me or insist I was trying to ruin her marriage. She was simply asking me to verify that I was speaking the truth, though. I therefore followed. I forward every screenshot I captured of their chats. I even forward to each other censored copies of the images the two of them sent. She ignored for really some time. There was enough to browse through there, not only in terms of volume. To read, it was weighty material. I thought back to how awful I had felt upon seeing those texts the first time. Though I felt awful for her as well, I didn't regret what I did. We both deserved somebody who loved us and repaid the affection given. Her response eluded me until the next morning. She claimed to have had a major argument with him after showing him the receipts. She considered divorce and had kicked him out of the house. I felt a little sickly pleasure suggesting her divorce attorney. It felt like a good way to stick it to David, and he had helped me negotiate a fair bargain out of the divorce. After that, we hardly stayed in touch, although I heard from my ex-wife. That day, enraged, she called me, she labeled me little and insecure for souring David's relationship. At first, I was a little taken aback that she would call me to defend the man she had cheated on me with, but at that point, there was nothing I would have put below her. I basically told her I couldn't share her sympathy for cheaters. Her outraged sputtering made the whole process worthwhile. It only improved when she charged me with destroying his life. David was losing his job as well as his marriage. As Sophia informed me, his wife had reported him to their company's HR division. Sophia was almost crying. The firm has a rigorous no fraternizing policy and started an inquiry right away. Any day he and Sophia were likely going to be let go. She began relating to me how she struggled with the stigma. People murmured about her. She knew some of the clients had heard about it. Some of her colleagues were treating her coldly. She was almost ready to give up and quit. She questioned me quite cynically whether I was currently happy. I informed her very genuine that I was. It wasn't of concern to me. Being the one who had been laughed at and lied to, I felt a little offended when I heard her complaining and made herself the victim. I suddenly found myself not appreciating learning about how she had wrecked her life. I merely wanted nothing to do with her going forward. "At least you still have each other," I murmured as I hung up the call. As it happens, they did not still share each other. Emma later on told me David left town following the divorce. He had lost his kids, his work, and his spouse. I wish I could have seen the gloominess on his face. About them, though, that's sufficient. I am carrying on with my life alone. I still have my dignity and my business. I am going to keep developing my life apart from her. David and Sophia lost everything ultimately as well. Both of them felt they could mess about with other people's life and leave without damage. Their lesson came to them hard way. OP, you are quite right. Their lesson came to them hard-earned. Losing their jobs, relationships, and reputations was completely their doing. It's good to see justice done without you having to stoop to their level. Though occasionally we have to stoop, that high road isn't always as fulfilling as it's talked up to be. In what way do you suppose? Also, appreciatively, you joined us today on our space. To avoid missing our next video, be sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Next time, see you.